You're listening to Nurture Your Zest. I'm your host, Ashleigh King, and I will introduce you to a wealth of interesting, fascinating individuals from all walks of life who will share their stories, how they've overcome challenges, and you will find out their top tips for success. Through this podcast, you can gain tips to grow and change your life and the way you see the world, and help you to nurture your zest. Hi everyone, today I'm joined by Anne English and I'm so excited to introduce you to Anne. So Anne is a visual communicator, which is a very interesting title, and I'm going to let her tell you all about it.
Hello. The visual communicator. So there's two sides to my business and why I call it visual communications, because that's the thing that connects us. It's the way that we can communicate to the world. It's way back when, if you think about it, one of the earliest forms of communication was cave drawings. And then throughout history, visual communications have been the thing that takes stories forward and inspires people. So there's two sides to what I do now with visual communications. And there's two different worlds of communications, okay? So there's the world that exists in imagination. And within the imagination, you've got thoughts and ideas, systems, that kind of thing, that often lives in your head. It's the stuff that occupies your thoughts. And then you've got your brands, your products, your services, if you've got a business. So it's like, how do you get that information out there? How do you communicate that? How do you transform your ideas into reality? And that's what I've done throughout my career, is I've always transformed an idea into reality. So I've taken the creative and then I've put the practical side on that. It's interesting to be able to help people communicate what it is. What I call it's their superpower.
I love that. And I love the idea of having a superpower, because I think once you find your passion and once you find your strengths and your areas that you are naturally good at and start using them, your gifts, yes, that's when your life can just change exponentially. And it's really important, actually. I wanted to ask you about that. So you mentioned where you help people who are creative to also apply the practical stuff. Yeah. And I think that's very important as a creative myself, or seeing a lot of creatives. We can be quite disorganized, and creativity is a spectrum. So we are all very different. But how do you help creatives be more practical?
Yeah, well, first of all, what I'd like to say is it's true about creatives. I work with creatives, but I think everybody's creative. I think sometimes that's been squashed. Children, they just draw, they just create, they're living in that world of the imagination. But as we get older, quite often it's the stuff that occupies in our head, it's the thoughts, it's the ideas. And people kill off that. And one of the words that I say, is just dreadful. It's the thing that it can squash your vision, it can kill off your ideas, and it can destroy your dreams. And that's the word but. So a lot of people will go, I'd love to do this. And then they'll go, but. And they go into the kind of the how, instead of focusing on the why, focusing on the big picture, the dream, it's like, I'd love to do this. And then they go, but. And then they start looking at the practicalities. And I've done Imagineering with Disney across in Florida. And it's a principle that I've always applied when I've transformed ideas into reality. You start with the vision first. And the vision, you plant that as seeds. And although some people think that ideas live up in the sky, this blue sky thing and all that kind of thing, to me, it's the foundations to everything. Everything begins with an idea. So if you start focusing on the ideas and dream big and, you find a way to capture that information, and then further on down the line, you work out how you're going to do it, then to me, that gives people more of a way to move forward. It's tapping into their why, it's tapping into their passion instead of focusing on the practicalities. So the Imagineers at Disney, that's a combination between the imagination, the designers, the creatives, and then the engineers, the people that can make it happen. So you've got to dream big first and then look at the big vision and then pull back from that. And I've developed a method, a process called vision mapping, which is how I've always captured information, captured ideas, and then come up with solutions, mapped that all out, got the stuff out of my head, got the stuff out of other people's heads. Started because you can, within your head, can be absolutely jam-packed full of ideas. And it's hard to know sometimes which are the good ones, which ones you follow. So it's a bit like what I do is, they say about Marie Kondo in your room, I'm doing that with your mind. I'm getting the stuff out there and then I'm categorising your thoughts. I'm connecting the dots. I'm helping you to then go, well, if it's this and it's that, what about the other? And you can do that. You can see that once you've actually captured it and you've visually communicated that. And then from that, so they're the roots, the ideas are planted as seeds at the bottom. You can then follow some of those roots down. If you find that you've hit a roadblock, a bit of a dead end, some reason you can't move forward with that, you can jump onto another one. Your vision, your focus, it might change, but you've captured it. And then out of that, what grows is when I do the vision trees to grow people's businesses, it's your brand, it's your products, your services. It's about the people who inspire you, the people who are on your team. Because most people that I work with, if they're an entrepreneur, they may work for themselves. And I'll say, who's on your team? And they'll go, but it's just me. And it's so not just them. There's enablers, there's people that help them as supporters, there's people who are their brand ambassadors, people that just think they're wonderful, there's people that inspire them. So we've all got a bigger team around us that can help us achieve what we want to achieve. It's just recognising that and having a system and a process and a method to be able to transform that and then take action. Because if it just lives in your head, it's never going to happen, is it?
Absolutely. And what you've said there about your supporters or people who are your natural cheerleaders, yes. Is someone who immediately came to mind for me. And I know you know her, so she listens to every single podcast. So it's a shout out to her, to Suki.
I was just talking to her this morning.
She's fabulous. And it's so nice to have somebody who just appreciates you and what you do and actually recognizing the great support network you have around you. I think it's really important because what you've said there about a lot of entrepreneurs saying it's just them, I agree with you banning the word but I also want to ban the word just, because we minimize ourselves so much, and actually saying for anybody to say it's just them, it puts you in a limited space, whereas when you say who you work with or who you're enabled by, who you're supported by, it opens up the world to a much bigger possibility. A place of imagination, of curiosity and creativity, and a whole world. I'm also really interested in what you're saying about Disney, because it's interesting how they have the Imagineers, the engineers who help create those creative things to come into being, because I think in the past there's been a bit of a disconnection between how people see science and the arts and creativity, and actually so much of science is creative, and it's a huge extension of it. So it's really nice to hear how that has played out, in a huge brand like Disney, that they actively encourage that collaboration.
Definitely. You need kind of two sides. Well, you need more than two sides. You need lots of input from different people that have got different perspective, different ideas, because that's how you grow and you develop and you connect things together. I love it when I work with people who then come back to me. Sometimes I'll get phone calls from the beach, or I'll get text messages in the middle of the night where people have gone, "Oh, I've just had a light bulb moment," because you're planting seeds, aren't you? It doesn't exist by itself. You can't flourish by yourself. You need other people around you to stimulate that growth. So, if you think about when people, the big inventors, would you say that they were scientists? Would you say they were creative? Often they had a team around them. And it's a combination of everything, isn't it? One thing that I do also say about, replacing the but with a because is also the why and the how. A lot of people focus on the how, the practicalities of how they're going to get something done. But sometimes you need to focus on the why, the bigger vision, the feelings, what it is that drives you forward, what it is that's your passion. And then, get people on your team that can help support you. So that may be creatives, that may be the more practical side of things. I'm a creative. My husband is an engineer. So it works for us. We founded a company called Charlie's Chocolate Factory, and we ran that for 10 years just as a part-time business. It was our night out. We went to other people's parties, got paid for it and ate chocolate and, entertained the guests. It was fantastic. But that started off as an idea in my mind. I found a chocolate fountain on the internet. I'd never seen one in my life, but I was like, gotta have one of these at the party. And he was the one that was like, okay, so we can't really hire one because there's only one company in the Northeast that's doing it. And actually a small one wouldn't have the capacity to serve the amount of guests that we need. And Sephora are the best chocolate fountains in America, and you wouldn't want it to break down. So his practical side of that ended up being well, actually, shall we start a business? Shall we call it Charlie's Chocolate Factory? So working together with people who've got different skills and bouncing ideas off just can make them flourish and grow. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. It's really special. I really like actually as well how you were talking about not just different mindsets and different skills, but just different backgrounds. So I know from chatting with you a few times that, like me, you really care about equality, diversity, inclusion, having different perspectives from all walks of life.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important because that is where you get the most unique and interesting ideas, in my opinion anyway. I would like to ask about how or why it is important to create intrigue, to tease your customers or the people that you want to create intrigue with. Yeah.
So Create Intrigue is all about attracting the attention of your target audience, making them stop, making them look. Maybe in the digital era, it's making them stop scrolling, that kind of thing. And there's a little story actually that goes way back when. So the other part of my business is vision mapping. There's the visual marketing. And I've set up the Visual Marketing Academy to train people on it. It goes back to visual merchandise and the traditional techniques. How did people used to get, in the olden days, them to stop and look in their window? And my mum tells us a story more recently that I hadn't realised, but my grandma, I know my mum did visual merchandising, but my grandma actually won a competition in Hexham for the best window display. And I was like, well, how did she do that? And she said, oh, well, she got some black paint and she painted the window and she left a little gap in the window. I was like, oh, and I was waiting for the big reveal, like Fenwick's window, then what happened? And she went, well, she didn't do anything else. I was like, what? How did that work? She said, well, she had a queue down the street because people were stopping to look through the little hole in the window to see what was inside. And in those days, you weren't liking things, with a thumbs up or voting on Facebook, that kind of thing. It was done by footfall. And because she had a queue down the street, she won the competition. She created intrigue just by leaving a little hole for people to peep through to see into that world. So there's lots of ways that you can create intrigue, but it's all about capturing the attention of your target audience. It may be about creating an experience, that kind of thing. I've got another little thing that I'll share with you because I find this fascinating to do with visual marketing. So I'm a big believer in threes, how powerful threes are. And this goes back to design and display. So you'll see things presented in threes, presented in triangles. If you were to go now around Newcastle, for example, if you were to go shopping, you'll start seeing threes everywhere. Things get presented as threes. And then if in photography or art, there's a rule of thirds, which is very powerful at those cross sections. And then if you're writing or storytelling, so there's things like before, during, after. There's Goldilocks and the Three Bears, the Three Musketeers. There's so many things that happen threes. So yeah, I'm really passionate about threes, and you can create intrigue with threes. So if you could finish this sentence, so there's a famous saying, blood, sweat. Have you heard that one before?
And tears.
Blood, sweat and tears. Do you know who actually said that?
No idea.
No. So I take it you've seen one of these before?
Yes.
£5 note?
£5 note,
Do you know who's on the £5 note?
The Queen.
Do you know who's on the other side?
I can't recall straight away.
So if you think about it, this is like, and talk about visual communications, you see this, probably on a daily basis, if not weekly basis, but you don't always take notice of what's in front of you. So there's a guy on the other side.
Is it Churchill?
Yeah, Winston Churchill. Now, Winston Churchill actually said that, but he didn't say that. He said something else. And if anybody wants to at home, get out the £5 notes and have a look at the bottom of it. There's some tiny writing and it tells you what he actually said.
Okay.
So, do you want to, I don't know if you want to reveal it, or we might want to create intrigue.
Well, we could ask people to look at their own £5 notes.
Yeah, but there was 4 things that he said, isn't there?
Absolutely. Yeah. So he actually says, we may as well tell them. They probably looked at their £5 note now. But he says, I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears and sweat.
Okay.
But actually, the way you're saying it is there were 3 things. And
we remember 3 things.
And they changed the order.
Yes. So why do we do that? So 3s are really powerful when it comes to display and to communicate your message. And that's because 3s are the first number that forms a shape. If you think about it, 1 can be a dot. 2, if you join it up, it's a straight line. But 3 gives you a triangle. So patterns are really important. And so there's lots of, as I say, when I do the training in the Visual Marketing Academy, ways that I can help people to create intrigue. But it's about telling a story. It's about capturing your audience, so it makes them stop and listen or watch or experience what it is. And it goes back to that superpower. Everybody's got a unique gift to share with the world, so it's tapping into what it is that you've got. And sometimes we don't know that. So I've been doing this vision mapping for a long time to solve problems. It wasn't until it was reflected back to me when I was doing it with clients, and then they would go, oh, what's that? And I go, what? It's just that word just that you said. I'll go, well, it's just, that's how I solve problems. That's how I connect the dots. And they're like, oh, that's amazing. And I'll say the things that make you go, So you go, are normally followed by light bulb moments at some point in time. So it was later when I was like, a few people had done that, and I thought, oh, there's actually something in this. People value this, but it's just what I do. And we've all got superpowers. I think one of your superpowers is you give people a platform to communicate, to share their stories. And you maybe say, oh, well, it's just what I do. But it's really powerful. And that thing about empowering other people, I'm a great believer in not just helping people, enabling people, but empowering people, teach them the skills, show them a different way of doing something, and then empower them to go off and tap into their superpower and be who they were meant to be. Don't hold people back. Don't keep them tied to you. Let them go and let them flourish, that kind of thing.
So it's interesting you say that, because it's made me think of a time where I didn't feel empowered, and I'd really like to ask you about this, because sometimes I wonder how, especially with you doing visual marketing, if you think about words, we all respond to different words. And for me, as you can probably tell through the podcast, you'll always hear the words creativity, curiosity, inspiration, zest. But there are some words that just turn me off completely, like the word structure, the word clarity, focus. Yeah. They bore me to tears.
Okay.
And I actually was working with a coach a while back, and we had a conversation where they were looking for me to develop more clarity and things like this. And I think clarity is important anyway, because it's a very busy world. There's a lot of communications going on anyway. So to have a confused message, I think it can be confusing for people as well to understand what it is that you do or who you are. But for me, it was just so interesting, because I'll never forget what they said, and it'll stay with me forever. But they had said, Ashleigh, you have so many tabs open in your brain. I feel like I just want to close them all down. And for me, I was devastated. So actually, I decided to end that coaching arrangement. But I couldn't.
So you were empowered then? Good.
I was, but I was also quite taken aback.
Yeah.
I do think it's important, though, to consider sometimes there is truth in people's messages. Yeah. But at the same time, I'm really interested with all of your working knowledge and your business background in how do you see the people you've empowered or the people you've worked with to flourish? How can they close the tabs in their brain, or maybe approach them in a way that is more productive?
Yeah. So I kind of get what you were saying there. And then it's the but. I wouldn't close it down. So yeah, you haven't seen my desktop. I have lots of tabs open. That's fine. And it's all about categorizing things to communicate them. So yeah, maybe you had lots going on in your mind and you needed a system to then get that out of your head and then communicate that. So the people that I've worked with have always had a big dream, a vision, and just helping them. Sometimes you can get overwhelmed by that, and then that can cause procrastination, or it can cause overwhelm, can stop you from moving forward. So what you need to do is just get it out of your head, get big bits of paper, get post-it notes. Then the next thing is about categorizing. So I talk about that, both the vision mapping and the visual marketing. If I was wanting to go and buy a top, for example, I might go to a department store or a woman's shop, and then I'll filter it down even more. So then I'd be like, I might choose it by section, the colours or the style, and then maybe down to the size and the price. So what we're doing is we're filtering down all of the time. We're categorising, yeah? So when you talk about focus, which is really interesting, the clarity, that's what we aim to give people at the end. I'll say through visual marketing, if you go into a store and it's looks like an Aladdin's cave, you've probably done that. Can you think of a place that you've walked into, a shop where you've gone and you've thought, oh, this is amazing when you've walked in? But often people walk out without buying anything. And that's because it's overwhelm. And it's sometimes that less is more. So sometimes you have to filter, you have to focus, you have to. So I'm all for capturing all the big picture stuff. Do that. Yes, get it out of your head. It's fantastic. You don't know where those nuggets of gold are going to be within that. And sometimes it's not at that point in time. You may look back on it later and go, oh, that's special. That's relevant now. You do have to focus down. You do have to gain clarity in order to take action and move forward, because you can't do everything. I get that. But don't squash the ideas. Don't squash the big vision. Don't squash the picture. No.
It's really important you said that, actually. I think especially for a lot of entrepreneurs out there, we have a lot of a lot of listeners from the startup community who or people who are stuck in their life, who don't really know what to do. Maybe they're in a job that they don't like. They don't know where to go, and they've got these dreams, but how to make them happen? Yeah. And like you say, why should they make them happen? But when you have all of these ideas in your head and they're just swimming around and you're not putting them anywhere, it's really hard to actually gain any momentum or any movement towards anything. So this is where I'd like to ask you about how you set goals, because for anyone listening, you can't see what I can see in front of me, but Anne has the most beautiful notebook with gorgeous drawings and big words and little words and incredible just creativity. Goals. 50 goals.
50 goals for the next 10 years.
Oh my goodness. So that is incredible. So we just spoke together about overwhelm. Yeah. So for some people, 50 goals is hugely ambitious. I'm really inspired by that. But how do you make sure that you can meet 50 goals? How does that work?
Okay, so you get it all out of your head, first of all. And then there's the big picture stuff, isn't it? So some of those things on there are big dreams. They're not going to happen tomorrow. Yeah. So again, it's that categorizing, what's the big dreams in there? So what's not going to happen, in the next week and the next year? What's the 10-year dream? What's the 3-year? What's next week? You break it down, you start with the big picture, and then you start categorizing where those things lie. So yeah, I've got it's my book of why, really. It's, my big dream, and I do map out. I've always loved maps and plans. So from even being a child, my favourite books were Millie Molly Mandy and Winnie the Pooh. And more recently, I just kind of worked out the connection that they both had maps in the front of the books. And I used to read through them and go on the journey with them and then flick back to, where's Millie Molly Mandy in the village? Where are they in the 100-acre wood? That kind of thing. So I always believe if you're going to go on a journey, if you're going to build something, if you're going to build a house, you get an architect to do a plan of your house. If you're going to go on a journey, traditionally you would have looked at the map. Now you probably program a sat nav. I've got maps in my head. When I used to do all the Christmas displays for the major shopping centres throughout Europe. I could draw you a map of the metro centre, I would create Christmas displays for shops in Paris, for shopping centres in Paris, and not actually even be in them. But I would look at the plans, I'd look at the photographs, and I'd build a 3D world in my mind. So I think it's really important to, if you're going to go on a journey with your business, is to get it out of your head and plan it, as if... You've probably got people who are listening to this that have spent more time planning holiday, a weekend away, the Christmas dinner, what they're going to buy people for gifts, that kind of thing, than that actually have planned their business. So it's about getting it out of your head. It's about getting it on the wall as well. Don't do a business plan that sits in the desk. Do a visual business plan that lives on the wall, because that will empower you to move forward. And then having other people that keep you accountable, I'm a coach to some people, but I have my own coaches. I've got my own team of people around me that inspire me. And you also want some of those people to be at a higher level than you. You don't want everybody sitting in the same pot, coming from different backgrounds and things, because collectively that's going to help you grow, isn't it?
For sure. And it's so important you shared that, actually. And you can have mentors who are younger than you or who are doing a totally different journey. I think mentors are really important, and coaches, investing in coaches and investing in your own personal development always. It's so interesting talking about business plans because actually I've just realized, and I don't know how I've never realized this before, but I don't have a business plan, and I've been running my business since April.
You'll have a fluid one in your head.
Yeah. But this is an important point about getting everything out, because if it is swimming in your head, it just takes up extra kind of brain power, brain capacity. Actually, I was talking to some colleagues this morning about the podcast, and we were just talking about bits and bobs and time management tips in general. And I used to be so good at planning things in my schedule, but I've been so busy recently, I kind of forgot a lot of those habits. And yesterday I sat down and I planned everything. Wow. And I mean stuff from it's very fluid, things can be moved, but even things like time for housework, time for family, whatever it might be, and all of the commitments I've already agreed to, things that are in my text or in my, coffees with people or networking. And actually, when you see stuff visually and you see how much time you're spending on one project, or maybe how much time you're spending on another, and how much you're not doing, it's really clear, especially with colour. I think colour is really important for categorizing, because you can see straight away. I had a bad mark this week. I had a brilliant mark for uni. I'm doing my MBA, but I had the most outstanding mark for accounting, 80. I just can't believe it. I've always told myself I can't do maths. So to get a mark like that at master's level is just, I can't believe it. But I did get a bad grade. And the reason I got that bad grade is because I went to TED Women in California and I had the most amazing time. But
that's great then.
It was. I was jet lagged. I didn't put the work into it. my focus wasn't there. And actually, that was what spurred me on to look at my time and look at exactly how I was spending my time. And I realized there was a huge imbalance in working on voluntary projects rather than the things that I'm investing so much money on. And so it's really interesting, these things, like actually having a business plan, I can see in many ways would have been helpful, not just to me, but to the people around me who I'm taking on the journey with me.
Yes. And that's really interesting, because some of the people that I've worked with, so for example, Kate at the All-in-One Company, she refers to her vision tree as the DNA of her business, and she can then communicate to other people what her vision is or what the team vision is much easier, because they can see it. You know, it's tangible. As I was talking about, it's communicating the brand products and the services is the tangible, it's the 3D, it's the things that exist. But you've got to get the stuff out of your head and bring that into the real world, so that exists too, so that you can move forward and take action, and other people can also see what your vision looks like.
So true. Thank you. So I'd like to know, so we've been talking a lot about goals, and you've got 50 goals to achieve in 10 years, which is amazing. Are you able to share maybe one with us, or any you feel comfortable to?
Okay, well, my big vision for next year is I want to share my wisdom with the world. So that might sound a bit kind of like OTT, but I've realised, I do have a superpower. You know, and the only way that I'm going to be able to help and enable people is by doing stuff like this, you know, podcasts, videos. I've got to get myself on video. So you see, I'm making you guys accountable for me by putting it out there now. I need to do more videos because I want to be able to help people. And I know that I've got skills that I've over the last, well, I would say 30 years when I've been working, but, you know, nearly 55 years, that knowledge that I can help other people with. And the only way that I can communicate that and get that out there is by putting myself forward. So I was a dancer. I loved to dance. I would go on the stage and dance, but I would never talk. I would never open my mouth. I didn't like that part of it. I would always hide behind. I've got to start sharing it more. So that's my big vision, to be able to share the stuff that I know that's going to help other people. And, you know, I need to start doing videos and coming on to podcasts and standing there on the stages and all that kind of thing. So I know what I want to do, how I want to change, you know, the lives of others. And then I've worked back from that, and I know the steps I've got to put in place to get there.
It's really powerful when you talk about it in that way, because it makes it really clear what needs to happen. Because as you've said, you've got the goal, but then you've worked back, and it's actually quite empowering to me to see, well, actually it's not so hard if you break it down.
Yes.
It's interesting that you're saying about videos, and I've heard this a lot from people, you know, they're so scared of putting videos up and putting them out there. And the thing that makes me smile is I watch a lot of videos. I actually prefer to watch a video for most of my assignments. I'll Google something. There's often people on YouTube talking about a key concept in a very simplistic way, which really appeals to my learning style.
Yes.
And so the thing that I've always noticed is there's never been a time when I've looked at somebody's video and thought, well, they need their roots done, or, you know, look at their teeth, or whatever we might have insecurities about. Yeah. Those things have never, ever popped into my head. But if I were to think about myself, I'm sure I would think, oh, well, I don't like my nose, or I don't, you know, there's things like this that we all have insecurities about. So why do you think people hide from sharing their story and their power with the world?
Yeah, it is about insecurities. It's about vulnerability. And I was going to do my first talk, and I've always done presentations. I've done literally thousands of contract winning presentations for the Christmas display industry to win all those big contracts. I always did the vision, the idea, the story, the visual communications, the plans, the visuals. But then I would give it to the project manager, and I would tell them the story. This is how you present it. but I wouldn't stand there myself. So when I got asked by somebody, can you come in and talk about visual marketing and share that with this group? It was only going to be small, but then I got told the night before that actually 40 people had booked on. And I got all my slides done, everything was really comfortable. And my daughter said to me, okay, Mum, tell me the story. And I just choked. I couldn't speak. And this was my daughter. And what was going through my head was those things. What happens if I fall over? What happens if all that? The mind monkeys, just the craziness took over my head. And then she just brought me back into the room. She just went, Mum, it's not about you. It's about them. And I think she was only about 14 at the time. I was like, whoa. And she brought me back to reality. And I thought, yeah, I've got all this stuff that I'm passionate about sharing with other people. I need to focus on how I can communicate that to them and how they can learn about this stuff. Not like you say, what do I look like? All that kind of thing. The silly nonsense that goes on in your head that a lot of us have. But the most important thing is about sharing your story and sharing your message. So if you focus on that bigger picture, then you just take a deep breath, you get empowered, and then you just got to go for it.
It's a really important message. You're so right. And it's that fear that we tell ourselves stories or we say things that are going to happen, but actually they're not things we should worry about at all. I'm really impressed by your daughter's wisdom at such a young age, and to hear that back, that must have really felt nice to hear.
Yeah. It's amazing what, again, that creativity, what children, we lose things as we get older. And sometimes you've got to tap back into that inner child, haven't you? As I say, I believe everybody is creative. Some people say that they're not, and that's maybe because they don't feel they can draw a picture or something like that. But we've all got ideas, we've all got different skills. So everybody, I'd love them if they just kind of thought about that and tapped into that inner creativity, that inner child, and just then expressed that to the world.
It's beautiful. Okay, so I would love to know, you've mentioned different theories and you've done so much and you're doing your vision mapping. What do you have any business books or any models that you love or that you use in your business? So you've talked about your own. Yeah. I would say this is you. I haven't heard anybody else talk about vision trees before.
Yeah.
But do you have any kind of tools or resources that you use to keep you or that have helped you in your career?
Yeah, I mean, I do love TED Talks. I just love watching. But I do tend to watch the videos. I also listen to podcasts as well. So if I'm in the car, that's a brilliant time. It's like having a university in your car, isn't it? When you're driving around, learning from other people, being inspired by other people. One of the very traditional books, the old books, is Think and Grow Rich. That's so powerful. And I can see patterns coming from that, because as I say, with the map and stuff, I love to connect dots and things, and you can see how other people have taken that system and then applied it in different ways. And I can look back at that book and then go, oh, well, that's about vision mapping, that's how that fits in and stuff, and kind of almost like reverse engineer it. So that's one of the big dreams, is the thought leaders in the world. I want to vision map their ideas, how they take people, how they solve problems, take people from pain to gain, all of that kind of thing. I want to do a vision map so that book, Think and Grow Rich, it had all of the great people way back when, didn't it? The Wright brothers and Henry Ford and all that kind of thing. But what about the people now? So to visually be able to communicate what it is, how they've then transformed their ideas into reality, that's my big vision. That's the big dream. That's a big goal.
That sounds fantastic, and I'd love to see that project. I think it would be really nice to see in a comic.
Yes.
Okay, so I wanted to ask you, so part of this podcast is it's a focused podcast to welcome the new year. So we've spoken about goals and goal setting and why they're important. But I would also like to ask, why do you think people break their goals? Why do they self-sabotage?
Yeah, it's easy to do that, isn't it? We've all done it. I think sometimes it's because they haven't got the why. They haven't got the because bit. I want to do this because it's tapping into the inner feeling. It's also having a plan. So how are you going to get there? What's the big dream? And then breaking it down into steps. So you've got a plan. And then, like I have done, putting it out there, making yourself accountable by finding, it might be a mastermind group, accountability partner, it might be a coach. You need other people to help you through that, because it's great at the beginning. Procrastination normally sets in when you get over the initial excitement, because it's like, yay, we're going to go for this. And then all of a sudden, if things start getting a bit harder and a bit tough, that's when you need to dig deep and keep going. And sometimes you need the support of other people around you, or you need to have that vision out there to go, do you know what, this is tough, but this is where I want to be. This is my dream. I need to keep going. So having a system, a scaffolding almost around you to support you for when you get to those points where it just gets too tough, that'll help keep moving you forward.
Thank you for sharing that. So we've been chatting for ages now, which I love, but we are going to have to wrap up. So I would love to know, how do you like to nurture your zest when you are feeling maybe a bit flat, because we all do, or how you re-energize that creativity or curiosity? How do you light yourself up again?
Yeah, connecting with people is hugely important. That's why a lot of people may have seen me around the Northeast at networking events. The reason that I do that, so for 25 years I worked in the Christmas display industry, and then I got made redundant. So start that company with the 2 directors and then me, everybody in that business I knew. When I went to work for myself, I didn't have any colleagues. The people that I meet through networking have become colleagues, have become friends, have become supporters, have become clients. So I feel it as that bigger team around me. So I need other people. I need to be inspired by other people's stories, visiting places, having experiences, that kind of thing. You can't do it in isolation. You can't just sit in a room by yourself. You need to go out there and get the energy from other people and from other things that are happening in the world. So that's how, that's what inspires me.
I think it's really special, actually. Networking, I'm a huge fan myself. I love it so much. And actually seeing the connections that happen, often you don't realize who knows who, actually it's interesting. When Anne arrived at the studio today, an outgoing podcast guest is one of her longtime mentees and friends, and that was just such a serendipitous moment.
It was wonderful.
So it's really beautiful to see those connections and see how different people have been nurtured and how they are flourishing through that contact with people. I think as well it's really important thing to say at this point about some of the connectors that help as well with that. So I'm thinking here about Michael Owen, actually. Definitely. And Angelfish. Yes. So Michael's been really supportive of me, and he's been a previous podcast guest, but I really like how he has got various creatives together, like yourself, who are consultants for Angelfish, but who serve very different needs. And that is a really special thing, I think, as well.
Yes, it is amazing. Yeah, so I'm one of the consultants that do, along with the likes of Paul Lancaster. And I've worked on projects with Michael, and what he's done is he's curated the people that he wants to work with. So we've all got specialist skills, and he brings those in to do bigger projects, that we possibly couldn't do on our own. So it's a brilliant team of different minds that come together. And I read an article, I love reading and listening to Michael, and again he's one of the people that helps push me and drives me forward, because he asks questions and he makes me go and then I go afterwards. So but there was an article in 50 odd that he had the other day about when you surround yourself, if you just surround yourself by like-minded people, he said all you get is echoes and reflections. I thought that's so true. You need other people that are going to stretch you, that have got other skills that you look up to, that you admire, on your team, don't you?
It's true. I love those short articles. They really resonate with me, and I love the writing style. It's quite evocative.
Yes.
So yeah, but I think you're right. You do need people around you who have very different skills to yours, and that's really special. So my last question for today, and I love to ask this one, it's my favorite, but what is your number one word to nurture your zest?
I think today it has to be empower.
Okay.
I'll leave you with that one.
Oh, I'll have
2020, empower.
2020 empower. That's a very exciting one because it feels like it links a lot with your personal goals about being on the stage or on podcasts, or and not just doing it for yourself, but doing it for the people that you're taking on the journey with you. I really like that one. So it's 2020. Happy New Year, and let's empower.
Yay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Nurture Your Zest. You can find us online on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Nurture Your Zest. If you've liked today, please subscribe. You can also leave us a review if you're feeling extra kind. Today's podcast has been made available through the kind sponsorship of TL Multimedia and That Branding Company. We look forward to catching up with you again soon as you learn to nurture your zest.